Hi everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel today. Today I have a layout that I made using the My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit for February. This month, the kit features papers and embellishments from the 49 and Market Vintage Artistry Naturalist collection. This kit is perfect for scrapbooking photos that have to do with nature. The cut file that you see here is one of the monthly cut files that you can have access to if you subscribe to the kit. I started out with the cut file cut in white, but I decided later on to cut it out in black. I'm using some of the pattern papers from the kit, and I'm cutting out solid butterflies to go behind the die cut butterflies. And you can also use your die cutting machine to do this, but I just felt that it would be quicker to just cut out these simple shapes using scissors. I wanted to make the wreath of butterflies very colorful, so I pulled out some of the colors that were in the collection, and I used my Distress Oxides and I inked the butterflies. There are 10 butterflies, and I'm going to make 5 different colors, which means there'll be 2 of each color butterfly. I started off making yellow butterflies. The Distress Oxides I used to make those are called Squeeze Lemonade and Fossilized Amber. I'm not trying to get an even coat of the ink. I wanted there to be some darker spots and lighter spots, so you could see that I'm trying to vary the amount of color that's on the pattern paper. For the red butterflies, I used Festive Berries and Candied Apple Distress Oxides. The first time I tried to cut the cut file out on black paper, my die cutting machine gave me a little bit of grief. So you could see off to the right, I have a butterfly that's from that first wreath that didn't work out so well. And so I'm using that to test out these pattern papers and see how they look behind the cut file. I wanted there to be 2 different colors of green butterflies. In the end, I'm not really sure how different the 2 sets of butterflies look, but I used bundled sage and peeled paint for 2 of the butterflies, and then I used rustic wilderness and forest moss for the other 2 butterflies. And here they look very different, but by the time I'm done, the colors look fairly similar. I wanted to make the last 2 butterflies gray. I didn't have a dauber with a gray pad on it handy, so I decided instead I would just rub the paper on the ink pad, and I actually really liked that effect. So I made the 2 butterflies gray by using Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide, and then I went back with the other butterflies and I did the same thing. I just rubbed the paper across the ink pad, not the whole paper, just in a few different spots. And I really liked that effect, so I continued the same process with all of the butterflies. Once I had all of the butterflies inked the way I liked them, I was thinking that it would be nice to add some texture to the butterflies as well. So I'm using a stencil from my stash because I wanted to put some dots on the butterflies, and this is a Simple Story stencil called Best Year Ever. I'm using some Liquitex modeling paste and a plastic craft knife. Just like the inks, I'm not trying to get an even coat of the modeling paste on the butterflies. I am applying the modeling paste in an irregular way so that there's a little bit more in some areas than others. And I just think that that adds to the interest of the butterfly rather than having the whole thing covered with an even coat of the modeling paste. In some cases, I went back and added a little bit more modeling paste to some of the butterflies, and in other cases, one application was enough. Sometimes I scraped a little bit of the modeling paste off, which you can always do with modeling paste if you want to shape the modeling paste or if you don't like the way it came out. Now I have the cut file cut out of black cardstock. This is just medium weight textured black cardstock. I don't like to have any large areas or a lot of areas of flat cardstock on my layouts. And then especially with black, I felt that it was a really dark black and I wanted to add a little bit of color to it. So I used 2 of the same colors that I used on the butterflies. I'm using Forest Moss and Hickory Smoke, and I'm just rubbing a little bit of color over the top. And it doesn't make a big difference, but I was happy with the way it looked. Now I'm gluing down those pattern paper butterflies to the cut file. I want to make sure that I put glue on all those little sections of the butterfly because I don't want the background paper to pop up later on. I'm going to put the different colors down in a pattern so that the two red butterflies will be evenly spaced apart from each other, and the same thing with the yellow and the gray and the two different colors of green. And when I glue things together on my scrapbook pages, I like to use Aleene's gel glue. I find that it's inexpensive and it dries clear, and I'm very happy with that glue, so that's what I use. I wanted to add some more dimension to the layout, so I cut out another cut file the same size from the same paper, and I cut it into individual butterflies, and now I'm inking it the same way that I inked the original cut file. And what I'm going to do is use those butterflies on top of the butterflies that are already there, but I'm going to pop them up a little bit. I'm just adding some fun foam in a couple of different areas on the butterfly, and then I'm going to glue down the center and put some glue on those foam dots as well, and that adds a little bit of dimension to the butterflies. And I hadn't planned this earlier. This was kind of a last minute decision, but I do like it. I do think that it adds a little bit more interest to the layout. And I made sure that I used black foam because the area that I have to put the foam pieces is very small, and I didn't want a bright color to show through if I use a different, brighter color of foam. So luckily I had some adhesive foam on hand that was black. So I continued around the wreath and added this extra layer of butterflies to each of the butterflies there. And then I thought that it would add some nice texture to the layout to put some pearls down the center. This is something that I like to do on butterflies all the time. And for these larger butterflies, I use some larger pearls. I matched the pearls to the colors of the butterfly's wings as best I could. I didn't have the perfect colors in each situation, but I think they're close enough. I put the larger pearls toward the head of the butterfly, and then I put some smaller pearls toward the tail of the butterfly. And I repeated this process for all of the butterflies on the wreath, and I made sure that the lines of pearls were as straight as I could get them. I felt that it would be really noticeable later on if they curved. Once I'd completed one butterfly, I moved on to the same color butterfly on the wreath, and then once I finished those two butterflies, I moved on to the next color. And as I had mentioned, I felt that the two different colors of green butterflies didn't really look that different in the end, but I used different color green pearls on the centers of them to differentiate them. Now the wreath of butterflies is finally complete. That took a little bit of time. And now I'm using one of the beautiful papers from the kit. I cut it a little bit smaller so that I could mount it on a piece of black paper. I definitely wanted to have some black around the edge to kind of contain the whole layout. And I'm using the edge of my scissors and I'm distressing the edge of that paper. I'm using some ATG adhesive, and I attach the pattern paper down to the black cardstock. And now I'm going to be attaching the butterfly wreath down to the pattern paper. I'm using the ATG adhesive for this. If you're not familiar with ATG adhesive, it is repositionable, and I thought that that would come in handy for this wreath. So I flip the butterflies over, and then I am positioning them, trying to make that a circle. It takes me a little bit of time to get it the way I want it. And then once I have the wreath where I want it, I press down, and finally that wreath is attached to the page. Now I'm working on my photo. I made a mat for it using Creative Memory circle cutters. I used one of the journaling pieces to mat the photo, and then I put some black cardstock behind it. I'm also making some corners for the layout. Whenever I have a wreath or a large circular element in the middle of the page, I like to make something to go in all the corners. These corner pieces go through quite a few changes, but the general idea of them stays the same. To make these corners, I cut out some right triangles from one of the journaling pieces. I mount each of those triangles on some black cardstock. I only left a thin border. I do want those corners to be noticeable, but I don't want the cardstock to be as thick as it is around the butterflies. Now for the mat that I made for the photo, I'm adding some fun foam to the back of it to pop it up a little bit. In situations like this, when the color of the foam won't show on the layout, I try to use some of the brighter colored foam pieces that I have. I save the white ones and the black ones for times that I'm popping something up and I'm afraid the foam will be visible, just like I did with the butterflies earlier on. So I put some ATG adhesive on that foam and I attach it down to the center. Then I briefly decided that I didn't want any black cardstock behind those corners. As you could see, they're really not noticeable now. So I thought of inking the edges, but inking the edges just didn't give enough of a black outline. So I do go back to that black matting in a little bit. Next, I'm going to cut out my photo in a circle shape. The smallest of the Creative Memories circle cutters works perfectly with 4x6-inch photos, and it's that same small circle cutter that I use to create the mats for the photo. So I hold the photo in place with some adhesive, and I'm going to use this title, Nature Lover. It's singular, it just says Nature Lover, and it's a photo of both of my daughters, but I thought that it went really well with the layout, and I liked the size of it, so I decided to use it. They're both nature lovers for sure. I attach those triangles to the corners of the layout again. You can see there that inking the edges really wasn't enough for this particular layout. I'm popping up the title using some fun foam, and I had inked the edges of the title using some of the Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide. I was trying to think of something that I could add to the corners to dress them up a little bit. I had some strips of paper that I tried to use on a layout and I ended up not using all of them. So I'm using some of those strips of paper. Those were from the punch out sheet, and I'm making a little border along the edge, the inside edge of all of the triangles. I also add a yellow and a red flower to each of the corners, and I fussy cut those out from one of the ephemera pieces that was also in one of the punch out sheets. On the lower right hand corner, you could see that I returned that black matting to the corner piece, and I think that it makes it stand out a little bit more, but because the border is a little bit thinner, it doesn't compete with the butterfly wreath or the photo in the center of the page. The trim that I'm putting on each of those corners came in a couple of different colors, so I'm going to use the different colors in each of the corners, so they'll all be a different color. And because I inked the edges of the gray pattern paper I made the corners out of, I put a little bit of distress ink in black soot on those trim pieces as well. I continue with all four corners until they all have a red and a yellow flower on them and also some trim. And to bring some of the flowers somewhere else on the layout other than the corners, I put some of the flowers surrounding the photo down by the title. The corners still looked incomplete to me, so I wanted to finish them off with a pearl embellishment that I had in my stash. So I placed one of those on each of the corners and glued them down with some gel glue. And I actually think it might be better to attach these embellishments down with some glossy accents so that it will hold a little bit better. This is a bow that's from the punch out sheet. I trimmed it just a little tiny bit and I inked the edges, again using distress ink in black soot. And then I used the dauber to ink the flowers that I'm using around the photo, and I just go ahead and attach those down. And I forgot to mention, this photo is of both my daughters several years ago when we went on a trip to Rochester, where my older daughter used to go to school. I'm so glad that she's close to home now. And then I was thinking that I wanted to add a finishing touch by putting a pearl on the bow, and that helps to connect those pearls that are in the corner to the rest of the layout. And that completes this layout. Here are some close-ups. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope that you enjoyed watching this video. If you are interested and would like to take a look at the My Creative Scrapbook kits, this is the limited edition kit, or you could check out all the kits by clicking on the link in the description box. I hope that everybody has a fantastic day, and I hope that I'll see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.